Welcome to Steve's Cottage with Steve Horner. Steve Horner, a former radio talk show host, helps spotlight the source of today's social chaos while offering practical solutions to the problems negatively affecting you and your family. And now, here's Steve.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. Welcome once again from the Cottage. This is Steve Horner, and you are so cordially welcome. This is where idealism meets reality. And it's oftentimes not a very pretty scene. But as for today, whoa, I feel good. I knew that I would. I feel good. I knew that I would. Oh, so good. So good. I got you. Ow. Yeah, baby. Here we go. Thank you, James Brown. Heck yeah, we are swinging. You know, I'm typically a guy who feels pretty good most of the time. For instance, sometimes I'll be at a grocery store or a convenience store or getting gas or walking down the street, and people will say, "Hey, how you doing? How you doing?" You know, that disingenuous, stupid question. How you doing? They don't really give a damn, you know. Sometimes I'll surprise them. Well, the check wasn't in the mail. I think I've got the flu. Sweetheart hasn't called. The car doesn't start. And the check, yeah. And then they'll turn back and they'll say, how you doing? So in other words, they weren't listening. So in order to start the dialogue a little bit, sometimes they'll say, well, how do I look? So I pulled that on a convenience store clerk, and it was about 1 o'clock in the morning. There was nobody in there, and so I was in the back looking for something. I had a date, and she was in the car, and I had to get something for her and whatever. And she said, "How you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm doing." Instead of just saying, "Well, fine, thank you," I said, "Well, how do I look?" And that startled her. She said, "Well, honestly, sir, you look bad." I said, "I look bad, but I feel really good." "Well, yeah, sir, but you look really bad." "But I feel good, but you look bad." I said, "What I think you're doing is calling me a vagina." Look bad, feel good. Well, so anyhow, she laughed at that, and so I'm saying, next time somebody says with a disingenuous, phony thing, "How you doing?" just ask them, "How do I look?" So I said that today at the library. A couple of black folk out there from Jehovah's Witnesses. I said, they said, "How you doing?" I said, "How do I look?" So on, and it developed into my podcast, and I said, I'm talking about Timothy. Now, they're out there with their brochures and everything. I'm talking about 1 Timothy and, chapter 2, verses 5 to 8. And I said, now, you are really nice folks, professional, well-groomed. You're in your 70s, been married 50 years. I do applaud you for being out here to promote the love of God. I said, but she shouldn't be out here promoting because Timothy says that. Well, it's all in your interpretation. So we, jostled that around for a little bit. And that's something that you can look up because that is a little bit of a crux of what we're doing here on this show. And that's why we call it, Steve's Cottage. But the books that I write, one of them that gets the most attention is called Cunt. And that's at stevehornerbooks.com. It's the pink one. And CUNT is an acronym. Can't understand normal thinking. C period, U period, N period, T period. Yes, the women have their periods, but we men, we have our exclamation points. And seriously, I know it scares the hell out of some, but it's time that we start exaggerating that. That's what turns people off about Donald Trump. He's a table thumper. But that is what we so dearly need, man-styled alpha male action out there to clean up this swamp. So as we're talking, they said, Steve, what you should check out is, now that you're into 1 Timothy, try 2 Timothy. 2 Timothy chapter 3, and I'm asking you, the audience, look it up, because I went home today and I looked it up, and it's frightening. It tells what was the predicted status of society if we allow things to go as they were and as they are becoming. And it's not terrifying, because I don't frankly give a damn. And I've told you that on this on this Cottage show before, folks. I don't really give a damn about you. A lot of people say, I love you. I'm praying for you. I want you here so much. Not me. Because if you refuse to take off your blindfold and you're stepping toward the cliff, the dark cliff at midnight, you're going to fall. And I'm warning you, is that, the inevitable will happen. You'll tumble down. And if you want to take my advice and listen to some of what I have to say and some of what I've written at stevehornerbooks.com, well, then you'll understand that it's all up to you. However I feel about you and, your well-being makes no difference. So that was a interesting bit of conversation today, and it really woke me up to some new to a new gospel reading that I had not been familiar with, because I'm not a major Bible thumper. I'm just an occasional Bible thumper, and I use my Bible frequently. But this was something that I found quite interesting. That's 2 Timothy chapter 3. It's kind of like where we are today. Well, the title of this show, and Sean and I didn't talk about this before because we were having fun talking about other stuff, is called Confusion. He's going to type it in right now. Capital CONFUSION. Confusion. Let's put an exclamation mark after that as well. Or let's call it an exclamation point. Confusion. And the reason is because last week we were talking about revenge. And I wanted to use that word revenge because that gave you a humanistic look at what was going on between the Jews and the Nazis. It wasn't racism. It developed into hate. But it wasn't racism. Or it wasn't sexism. Or it wasn't, it wasn't hate the Jews. It wasn't hate your religion. I hate your behavior. I don't like your behavior. Your behavior is hurting me. And both sides were saying this. And then they acted out in retaliation. But what comes first in this whole mess of human quarrelsome activity is confusion. How about this? Till death do you part. Will you always remain together? After a couple of years, the seas get a little choppy, and one of you decide, I want a divorce. What? You want a divorce? Well, I thought that we had pledged to stay together till death do us part. You see the confusion there? How about this one? Make sure your baby is properly strapped in because, if you have an accident, you want to make sure the well-being of your baby is safeguarded. However, if you decide to kill that baby just before she's born, abortion is legal in many states, and you're welcome to kill her. What? How about some kid who's 18 years old listening to that? That's confusing. That's hypocritical. That doesn't make sense. I can kill the baby 2 minutes before she's born, but afterwards, if I do, I'm in jail for 20 years. That doesn't make sense. How about this one? And we talked about this one before. There shall be no discrimination at places of public accommodation, like a bar, pool party or something. We shall all have equal services and advantages based on no discrimination based on gender, race, religion, your alphabet status. However, if you do come to Lucky's or Charlie's pool party, in Vegas or Minneapolis or Philadelphia or Chicago or New Orleans or, San Diego, the women will get in free while the men have to pay. Oh. Well, how does that work? That's contradictory to the 14th Amendment of Equal Protection. It contradicts the state's constitution that says that we shall all be treated equal. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, but you got to eat it, Steve, because, what do you think you're at? A sausage fest? See, that's confusing. Why? Because it's hypocritical. Doesn't make sense. Be charitable. Give your money to nonprofits so they can continue the problems, like homelessness. Give your money to those 501c3s so they can continue making their 6 and 7 digit salaries because they're nonprofit. It's tax deductible. It's tax free. And so then they can continue making this while they soak you and exploit your sentimentalism. I feel good. No, don't. That's beautiful, baby. That's good. So anyhow, and how about the Associated Press? I see that almost everything they write these days is contradictory. Doesn't make sense. That's confusing. Aren't they pledged to be journalism and be objective and be arbitrary? Liars. How and why and when did public schools break down so much and so quickly? Could it have been when women were in control? Women are sentimentalists. They can't handle the pragmatism of teaching discipline and responsibility. They're not wired that way. But why are they in charge? That's confusing. I don't get it. Can't we see that things aren't happening? Can't we see things aren't happening with the nuclear family breaking down? Dad's absent? Not in charge? So then the kids don't get to church. They don't get their homework done. They don't get proper sleep or nutrition. And I think that's what has kept me so perky over the years, is because of my spiritual life and my exercise and my diet routines and no pills and no guilt because I've lived a good life. And I'm living a good life. And these details are in my single parenting book at stevehornerbooks.com. And, and also, get to stevehornerbooks.com and scroll down and see my 9 steps involved in proper balancing work and family. That's important to a lot of you hardworking families. Being able to juggle the obligations of work and family and be productive. Not just surviving, but thriving. So give that a try. And there's contact info there too at stevehornerbooks.com. Just scroll down and you'll see my YouTube that does a quick blip on my 9 drills, which are formatted so that when these companies have me in, I'm able to do it all in a lively, credible fashion for just 1 hour. Well, so anyhow, so these are How about the border? We've got rules in place to keep illegal people out, illegal immigration down and out, but they keep flooding over the border. Why is that? See, it's all confusion. That's what starts the mess. And then you get angry and the revenge steps in because you feel betrayed. And that's when the violence can set up and set out and destroy and hurt. So if we keep the confusion down, keep things consistent. You know, what's fair today is fair tomorrow, unless you get off your ass and get to work to change the bill, to change the statute, to change the law, so that once again, we're all on the same page. But if you're just going to sit back and moan and complain, why isn't this like that? Then you're going to be a perfect victim to be lassoed with that angry rope of revenge. And you're going to lash out because you feel betrayed. And that's going to result in violence. And that's what I don't want you to do. We are a preventive cottage here at Steve's Cottage. So, it's like the American justice system. Look what they're doing to Donald Trump. Nothing makes sense anymore. And another thing that I wanted to point out is there justice in justice anymore? Or is it all political? You know, look at the recent Supreme Court rulings on abortion, on affirmative action, on that student debt decision. Now, these are hot-button political issues, aren't they? Yes, they are, is the answer. We get 6 conservatives voting one way over here, and we get 3 liberal cunts voting over here. Now, if justice was the fair-handed, blind woman that we see stoically in the courtrooms, that wouldn't happen. There would be crossover. Because how many ways are there to say that, yes, today is Wednesday? But if it's politically advantageous for you to say and believe that it's Thursday or Tuesday, then that's the way you're going to vote. And that's not justice. That's not fair and consistent. That's lying. That's political. And that's what the justice system has become, political. And that's what's causing a lot of confusion, a lot of anger, and I believe a lot of violence. That's the domestic abuse issue. That's the crime in the city with these kids who have grown up without a father, without enough love, without education, without church, without a spiritual life. That's the answer, folks. And it was fun talking to those church people here today in front of the library, the Jehovah's Witnesses. And I'm a Catholic man, and so we have differences of even what comprises the Trinity. They don't believe in the Trinity. We do as Catholics. But we all believe that it's a good idea to live a good life if you want to go to heaven. Because I don't want to go to hell. Hell no. Hey, let's talk about the Paradella Chronicles. They used to be called the Cunt Chronicles. These are some examples of the idiocy, the confusion, the lies that are, that we see all the time in the news. This group called Moms for Liberty. Moms for Liberty. They're backing DeSantis and they're backing Trump. And Moms for Liberty, they came from just 3 Florida moms, from the COVID, and then they went on and they did this and everything else. And I'm saying Moms for Liberty is a hoax. Moms these days are not what the moms used to be. Today's mom is not what she used to be. Today's mom is often a coward. And in it only to be able to shop to buy more junk. Moms are into shipping their children off to childcare, to strangers, so they can make more money and buy more shit. They're into abortion. They don't attend school board meetings. There's no discipline at home. There's no church at home. There's no spiritual values. But and so in a metaphor, that's what I say. That's what's needed to prevent that big growling dog that's circling the neighborhood, ready to devour your children. That's when the moms should have been barking, should have been speaking up. Not just when it's political nicey time, you see. And that only happens when the dogs jump the fence and crapping in her yard. Then mom's going to go, oh, I want my constitutional rights. I want the... it goes way back, Mom. It goes back to the prevent stage, okay? Preventive maintenance. There's a lot of things to clean up right now in the courts, at your schools, in the legislatures. You see what they're doing to Donald Trump? Everybody should be in the streets banging pots and pans at that absurdity. I just wanted to mention, that Parkland school shooting. What do you think that guy that was supposed to save those kids is thinking these days? He's been exonerated. Scott Peterson. As a guy who was in the infantry in Vietnam, yours truly here at the Cottage, I ran into a lot of stuff, and I feel really good about myself the way when, the shit hit the fan, I acted the way I was trained. Boom, right toward the action, okay? A lot of people killed around me. Thank God I made it. Thank you, Jesus. But I took a shot in the throat and the arms and all this, and all the Purple Heart and everything else, you see. But I reacted the way a soldier was taught to react, and so that has given me great strength. Looking back on that, I know I'm not a coward. How is Scott Peterson going to react? I mean, he's got excuses, but he was hearing gunfire while these kids are being shot. Pretty nasty. So that's why I say when you're climbing that mountain, at the end of the show, which is coming up here in just a couple of minutes, when you're climbing that mountain, get off that well-beaten trail. Get your neck into deep waters so that you can make a difference, instead of taking the easy trail, which is easy, but it's, the least rewarding. Here's another AP story. In the Associated Press, absolutely Jewish run. They're just stirring the pot. They've got their they've got their preconceived ideas about the way a story should run. And so here they're talking about U.S. maternal mortality soars over 2 decades. I mean, it's happening with the natives, with the American, with Native Americans, with the Alaskan natives, and it's happening with these illegals, and it's happening with oh boy, with black people. It's really up there. But nowhere in this story, you see, they'll talk about poverty. And they'll talk about how we white people are not giving enough money to these people so that they have proper maternal. But they don't talk about the lousy care that goes on with these cultures that leads to high mortality and high diabetes and high crime. And, that's the kind of stuff that they won't tell you. And by not knowing, you're confused. And when you find out, you feel betrayed. And I am so happy to be here today. And that's just about going to wrap it up, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining me here at the Cottage. I'm Steve Horner. Make sure you check out my books and do me a favor and do yourself a favor and buy one at stevehornerbooks.com. And when you're taking those trails to get to the top of the mountain with your conflicts and your challenges these days, take that less traveled trail, because I'll tell you, it'll make you feel big, 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 bold and strong by the time you get to the top. It'll give you better memories and much better rewards. So until next time you visit, you take real good care of yourself.
Thanks for joining us. Visit Steve's Cottage again with Steve Horner.